Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn Mullane, and on behalf of the Winchester League of Women Voters, I want to welcome you to today's Day of the Races. Today's forum features first a debate among the candidates running for a seat on the Winchester Board of Selectmen. This candidate debate, which will last roughly 50 minutes, will then be followed by an information session about a critical issue facing Winchester voters. We have invited Tom Howley, Chair of the Board of Selectmen, and Peter Scheinmetz, Finance Committee Chair, to speak about the general override question that will appear on the ballot on March 29th. For both the candidate debate and the override panel, the majority of questions were submitted in advance by Winchester community members. Additional questions were developed by the League's organizing committee. Before we begin, I just want to say a few words about the League of Women Voters. First, the League of Women Voters is an organization open to both men and women. Its mission is threefold: to increase understanding of public policy issues, to encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government, and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League is also nonpartisan. Throughout the 91-year history, the League has built a solid reputation of providing fair and informative candidate debates. Members do the hands-on work that protect democracy and lead to civic engagement, such as the forum that we are bringing you today. If you are interested in joining the League or want more information, please pick up one of our membership brochures out back, or visit our website, which is lwvwinchester.org. This program is being broadcast live by WinCam, and will be rebroadcast by WinCam on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 37. Participating in the forum today are timekeepers Maura Sullivan and Susan Lewis, who will assist the candidates and moderator in adhering to the schedule. Lastly, and without further ado, I would like to turn the mic over to our moderator for today's event, Ms. Patty Muldoon, who in turn will introduce our candidates. Patty is a member of the League of Women Voters in Arlington, Mass., but more importantly, today she is representing the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts in her role as a trained moderator who has moderated several state and local Day at the Races forum. Thank you. Now it's Patty.
Hello, Winchester. So you will note that we have two candidates seated here rather than three. Brian O'Connor, your incumbent selectman who is running for his third term, is a Vietnam War veteran and has worked at Polaroid for 26 years. And he now works as the Chief Operating Officer for the bioscience firm Entelos, which is based in California. He lives on Nelson Street with his wife and 3 grown children. Brian O'Connor is unable to be with us today because he is in California. Apparently, due to the earthquake, so many Japanese and American folks have been coming through California that he was unable to get a flight. So he sends his regrets. I know he really wanted to be here. So that will allow us to get to many more questions for the two candidates that we do have before us. So there's always a pro. When something negative occurs, there's always an upside. And so we can get to more of your questions today. And let me just quickly go over our format. The candidates will each speak for 2 minutes with an opening statement, and the order was chosen by a flip of the coin. And we will then have a number of questions that they'll have 1 minute to answer. Our timekeepers have cards to time them, and they'll get cards at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and then when it's time to stop, it will be time to stop and just finish up a brief sentence, and then we'll move on to the next question or candidate. Then we will have 2 minutes closing statement. And that will be the end of the people part of this forum. And then we will move on to the idea part, talking about the override. So it's a two-parter today. And let me begin by introducing our opening speaker, Douglas Marmon. Care to stand? Mr. Marmon, age 64, is running for his first term on the Board of Selectmen. He's served on the Capital Planning Committee for 5 years and is currently the chair. Previously, he served on the Finance Committee for 9 years. He is an investment software consultant and has been a Winchester resident for 35 years. Mr. Marmon lives on Kenwood Road and has 3 grown children. Thank you. And Mr. Douglas J. Wilkerson is 54 and is also running for his first term on the Board of Selectmen. He's lived in Winchester since 1981 and has been with the police department for 30 years, where he is a juvenile detective and police prosecutor, and has served on the executive board of the Winchester Police Patrolmen's Union for the last 7 years. Mr. Wilkerson is retired from the U.S. Navy after 21 years of service. He lives with his wife on South Gateway and has 2 grown children. Thank you. All of the questions that are coming before you come from voters in Winchester via the League sent out questions via the newspaper, cable. There were posters around town and their own website, and then screened the questions for duplicates. So these questions should be very representative. And so now we would just like to have our opening statements. Mr. Marmon, if you would care to give us your 2-minute opening statement, please.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this debate. This is real democracy in action. My name is Doug Marmon. I've lived on Kenwood Road for 35 years. My wife and I have raised 3 children who went to Morocco and then McCall and graduated from the high school. And my wife's a school librarian who worked for a while in the Winchester schools. I've been on the Finance Committee, I've been on town meeting for 30 years, served on the Finance Committee for 9, where I helped establish the multi-year budgeting policy. I'm currently the chairman of the Capital Planning Committee, where I've made more rigorous the project evaluations that we do, so they're easier to debate within the committee and without. And this year's capital plan includes a couple of far-reaching school projects, the Vincent Owen reconstruction and the feasibility study for the high school that will help us plan what to do with that building. So that's who I am. Let me tell you 3 things that I stand for. First of all, I'm in favor of the override. We need it to keep the level of services that we treasure in this town. 2, I'm disappointed in the wage contracts that we signed last fall. The cost of the wage and benefit package is rising much too rapidly and is a major driver in our need for additional taxes. We failed to make any changes in work rules, which we'll need if we're going to have Winchester run as an efficient business. And the contract term was too long. It provides for us with stability when what we need is flexibility. And 3rd, I want to hire a permanent full-time town manager. A citizens committee should start that search immediately with guidelines from the selectmen, and the process should be open to all candidates. Thank you.
Beautifully timed, thank you. And Mr. Wilkerson, your 2-minute statement, please.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank the League for having this. It allows us to put our faces and our names and for people to see who we are. I've lived in town, married my wife in 1980, and I moved in shortly thereafter. My children went to the Lincoln School, and both of them graduated from Winchester High School. One is now in the Marine Corps. He's deployed, and the other one is living in Phoenix after graduating from Westfield State. My wife has been a lifelong resident of the town. She grew up here, has seen it grow, and as I have over the last 30 years. Some good, some bad. Sometimes I think we need change, which I think now is one of them. As my fellow candidate said, there are a lot of issues in front of us, the override being one of them. I am against the override. Most of you know I work for the town as the police department, so my salary is also being held into question. And as a resident, I am still against the override. I feel there are other measures that can be taken to quote-unquote tighten our belt. to reach other areas where we can come up with maybe not funds, but maybe ways we can elasticize the process to make it more compatible to everybody. Excuse me, that being said, my outlook as coming from a union member who does work for the town is much different than the people who are in office and the people who assist the people that are in office to come up with the numbers. They have a different view, and I don't necessarily agree with their view. It is one view, mine is different, and I would like to think that my view is held in some regard by a lot of different people in this town who don't necessarily get someone to speak for them. And I'm hoping to step into that role and speak for the people who don't normally get their voices heard. And I think that would be about it, and let's hope we can move on.
Thank you so much. Also timely. Before we get into the Q&A, I just want to give you a quick summary of the office that these two gentlemen are running for, along with the incumbent. The Board of Selectmen is made up of 5 members with 3-year overlapping terms. This year, there's 1 position open and 3 candidates. The Board of Selectmen functions as the town's executive branch, and as such, formulates town policy, ensures compliance with state laws, and administers town meeting decisions where it has jurisdiction. The board appoints a town manager, provides professional management of town services and departments except the schools. The selectmen compile the warrant, grant license permits, review budgets, and settle claims against the town. They're responsible for all local, state, and federal elections. They attend hearings and town functions. And I'm sure there are other things they do as well, but those are the basics. So let's go right to the questions. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance, so they are going to be fresh. So, you may never have been asked these questions before. The first one, let's see. In 2007, the town of Winchester purchased the Right Lock Farm. What would you propose the town do to move forward on protecting or recovering its investment in this property? Mr. Wilkerson, would you start, please? 1 minute.
The town needs to find a contractor or someone who's willing to invest in that property that can build something that will help the town, will assist it in its tax base, will use it in a way that cohabitates with what the town already has there and in the local area without looking, so to speak, out of place, without taxing the structures we have in place already. But it needs to be utilized. Standing alone, standing out there while we pay taxes on it, as well as the bill, the town needs to find someone that wants to agent up with it, or partner up with it, to make it into a usable place that we can all benefit from.
Thank you. And Mr. Marmon?
Well, as soon as market conditions permit, I think we need to attempt to find a developer who will follow the general plan that was put down by the Abbott proposal. We do have the plans, the permits all ready to go, so if we can find somebody who can do that, that will save them a bunch of money, and perhaps we can then make a deal and get back on the track that we thought we were on before Abbott pulled out and the market kind of turned down. I also want to talk a little bit about the Conservancy, the part of the land that we don't want to develop. I think the Conservancy has done a good job of coming up with a plan for the future of how to use that piece of property for the benefit of all, and I think that they should be given a long-term lease, which is up at this town meeting, in order for them to go ahead and implement their plan.
Thank you. And Mr. Marmon again. Turning to downtown Winchester Center, what is your position on the Smart Growth Grant, and what do you see as its benefits or potential problems for the town?
First of all, we got to give great credit to the planning board for a couple of things. One is getting that Smart Growth Grant, and for having a set of discussions, conversations about what we should do in the downtown. Lots of ideas have come up. We're a ways from really figuring out exactly what we want to do, but still a great conversation of different pieces. The Smart Growth Grant will allow us in-kind benefits, consulting different studies so we can figure out the particulars of maybe some marketing studies or some traffic studies to help us figure out what the next step should be in the downtown.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkerson?
I think it's a very good, the smart growth was, when it put into place, allows us to partner with different people using people's strengths to help us make decisions that will benefit all of us as citizens. I mean, we all enjoy the downtown. It has many things that we look forward to using, whether it be stores, restaurants, or whatever, and we need to grow it. If we leave it stay the status quo, it will just get old and stale. It needs to move. It needs to change. And this will give us a way to partner ourselves with people who know how to do this, that can assist us in planning for the future, which is what we look at. We always want to go for the future. If we stay standing still, and we stand still and everybody moves around us, we need to move forward. And I think this will help us greatly in moving forward.
Thank you. And again to you. What role should the Board of Selectmen have in running the town, and how hands-on should the board's interaction be with a town manager?
Interesting topic. I believe the board is a governing board. It should not be a hands-on board. The town manager, which we hire to do that, should be a professional in every way, shape, or form, and should know how to manage the day-to-day operations of a town. And therefore, we pay him him or her a reasonable salary to do that. He should be qualified to do that, and he should be allowed to do that. The board should oversee his actions, but should not control his or her actions. That's the way I see the selectmen interacting with the town manager as we go on. Let's see if we can get a candidate that can fulfill that bill.
Mr. Marmon?
Well, I certainly agree that it's an oversight board. It does have a great deal of knowledge and interest in the work of the town manager, but it does need to step back, give oversight, and not try to do the job by itself. I think that we have that we certainly need a strong full-time town manager in order to kind of make sure that we get the balance right.
Thank you. And let me offer you both some water in case you get
Thank you.
a little dry, all this talking. And Mr. Marmon, again, in your view, what do you think is the urgency of hiring a new town manager?
I'd say it's immediate, not the hiring, but the beginning of the search process. There's no reason in my mind to wait. We need to start looking and see what we can find and continue the process until as soon as we find a good candidate and we can make it work, make the hire.
Mr. Wilkerson?
Well, Well, Ms. Lannon has provided very, very good services for us, the town. She was very flexible enough to fill in the role when these selectmen asked her. I agree with my compartment here. I believe we need a full-time town manager. He or she has to be trained in all aspects, and we need to search for him or her soon. Someone needs to be in charge. I think she's doing too many jobs while she does them good. I think we do need someone who specializes in that field, and it gets put in there.
Okay. So, starting again, get the rhythm here. What does the term fiscal responsibility mean to you? And do you think the proposed $1.44 million general operating budget override is fiscally responsible?
Fiscally responsible. Well, as we all are as adults, we make paychecks or we have some type of income. We live within our means. If we cannot live within our means, we, so to speak, tighten our belts so that we don't spend as much or we have less needs. I believe the town also has to do that. As I stated earlier, I am against this override. I feel fiscally we keep reaching into our citizens' pockets that sooner or later the pockets are going to be empty. So therefore the town, as an entity in and of itself, if it were a homeowner, it would basically tighten its own belt and find some way to not spend as much money and still get the same similar results. And I think the town needs to do that now.
Same question.
I think the selectmen have taken a prudent course in their deliberations. They have reduced the size of the override from their their position in January, and I think it's probably as small as it can be to keep their 3-year horizon. They've done some good work in coming up with a 3-year projection. I think that the question on the override is right to be put to the citizenry. There's a good question as to whether or not we can maintain the services that we currently have or have to cut them, and that needs to go to the citizenry. It's fiscally responsible to do that.
Thank you. All right, now we're dealing with health care costs for town employees, which continue to be a budget buster as premium increases outstrip revenue growth. In the private sector, business owners make unilateral decisions to control these costs, but in the public sector, that doesn't happen. What do you think is the most effective method for the town to control health care costs? And a second part of this question, should plan coverages be changed or co-payments increased? And that one is again to you, Mr. Marmon.
I think that we should join the group insurance contract, GIC, at the state level. I think that our current health package that we give to our employees is really too rich. We can't afford it. I'm not ready to say that it should be, that we need to remove any of their bargaining rights, but I think the state could come in. The state workers have the GIC. Why shouldn't municipal workers have the GIC? Did I answer both parts?
Should plan coverages be changed or co-payments increased? We'll give them a little extra time.
Well, going to the GIC, I think, would do that. Yes, I think the plans that they have are richer than the plans that most of the rest of us have.
All right. Same question. Do you want me to repeat those questions?
Yeah, since they're two-part.
Yeah, let me just repeat it. Healthcare costs for town employees continue to be a budget buster since premium increases outstrip revenue growth. In the private sector, business owners make unilateral decisions to control the costs. Public sector, this doesn't happen. What do you think is the most effective method for the town to control healthcare costs, 1? And 2, should plan coverages be changed or co-payments increased?
You want? All right.
I've answered it.
As a recipient of one of those plans, I don't find it overly rich, as my partner said over here. While there are ways to change and there are ways to pare it down, the unions have worked with the town. Unfortunately, we can't seem to come to an agreement of how we should share the profits that are made when changes are made. By changing the co-pays or the structure, you're going into the middle and you're micromanaging it. That can be left to the experts between the town and the insurance companies and potentially the unions. The unions were given these rights many decades ago. And if this were a private entity, the town of Winchester were a private company, we wouldn't be here asking for an override. The private company wouldn't run in a deficit. And if it did, it wouldn't be around long. So therefore, the two hands don't necessarily shake. The insurances can be changed. The unions are willing to change them, or change within them. The town has changed. The last time we changed within them, we did increase the co-pays. We increased everything concerning that. The employee now pays substantially more than he used to before for the same services, or actually less services. So the unions have given before. It comes back to how many times you're going to come to our well and keep taking water out. The GIC, I don't believe, is a good bargain for the town nor the unions. I think something else can be worked out between the two of us to come to an agreement.
Thank you.
Do we have a rebuttal on that?
You know, we've got a little extra time. Would each of you like to take 30 seconds more to talk about that?
You said something about sharing the profits, and obviously there are no profits involved in this. There are extremely fast-rising costs, and if we can figure out a way to reduce some of those costs, you'd like to have them put in to your paycheck. To me, they are rising costs that we both should be trying to bring down and stop, not sharing the profits. I just I don't understand that.
Thank you.
You have to understand, the town of Winchester is an employer. It employs the people that you're asking to share with. And most of those people cannot live inside this town based on their salaries. So therefore, the sharing comes from working, negotiating as two entities to come to a common goal that benefits both. And I believe that's where we need to be.
I don't think that's completely resolved the matter. We'll have to leave it to your vote.
Nor will it.
Moving along to the schools, student enrollment at Winchester High School is projected to increase by about 30% over the next 5 years, based on the number of students already enrolled in our middle and elementary schools. Now, town meeting voted to fund a feasibility study to determine how best to house and serve these students, by house meaning classrooms. If more classrooms or renovations are needed at the high school building, how would you propose the town fund these improvements? And would you support an override in 2 to 3 years' time to pay for improvements to the high school? Mr. Wilkerson.
If the feasibility study were to determine, and I were to read the findings, and it would determine that there were absolute needs to keep those students successfully housed in a classroom, then I would look at that feasibility study and address the possibility of an override at that time frame. As far as giving carte blanche, I'd have to see the results prior to that.
There's no doubt in my mind that the feasibility is going to say that we need more classrooms. The kids are coming. The feasibility study is trying to answer a whole bunch of other questions. Do we build a new high school? Can we renovate? Do we have to add a wing, or can we remodel inside our current footprint? What are we going to do with the students while we're doing the reconstruction? Those are the questions that have to be answered. And when we get some answers to those questions, we'll begin to get a handle on the costs. Somehow or other, we have to not only analyze all that and come to some consensus, but we have to agree on a size for the override. It's going to be a debt exclusion override. It's that we have to come together and figure out how much we can do before we can proceed.
Thank you. Well, sticking with that tune of override, do you believe the amount of the proposed override, $1.44 million, is correct, even though the budget call for next year calls for $1.48 million from cash reserves in addition to the override amount? And this voter would like you to answer with a simple yes or no. Do you support the proposed general override? So first, do you think the amount is right? And second, do you support it? Starting with Mr. Marmon.
Yes. The size is big enough to get us through the 3 years. It will have some surplus in the first year and get through. I don't want to get into the 3-year plan particularly, but I think it's the right size, so we don't have to come back and deal with the override again right away.
Short and sweet.
I think I've already stated my answer would be absolutely not. No, I am not for the override. Therefore, the amount being said, if I'm not for the override, I'm not for the amount. Services may be curtailed, we may move on, but I'm not in favor of the override whatsoever.
All right, succinct. What is your position on implementing meters to redistribute parking in downtown Winchester? And again, Mr. Wilkerson.
When I first came on the job many years ago, we had just gotten rid of the meters downtown. The little parking meters we used to put quarters into. As I remember the guys speaking down there, they were an absolute nightmare as far as maintenance. They actually took more time and money to keep up than they were actually worth. So actually individual meters I would not be in favor of. At meters at several of our local parking lots where the commuters use, I would definitely be in favor of looking at that as a revenue stream. I do believe a commuter that goes into Boston on a day-to-day basis loves to come here and park for free when you look at the parking garages in Boston or Cambridge or any one of the other ones. So yes, I do think that whereas we provide the space, they should provide us some income.
Thank you. Mr. Marmon?
I think this is one issue on which we pretty much agree. I know that the planning study has suggested a lot of parking meters, that we need to make certain that the parking in the center of the town turns over quickly, and meters help with that. But I went to a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, and they weren't very excited about these meters. I haven't heard very many people being excited in favor of the meters. It seems to be almost a problem whose solution is worse than the problem we started with.
Thank you. With tight budgets, the town has shown a preference for cutting technology before cutting services. Should the town establish a technology stabilization fund similar to the existing capital and building stabilization funds to fund technology replacements and improvements town-wide? Again, Mr. Marmon.
No, I wouldn't set up a separate fund for this. We do have a capital process. And I think the capital planning process will provide investment in technology anytime that we have an identifiable benefit that comes from the technology. There definitely are places where putting in technology brings back productivity, and I think we will fund those things. Setting up something separate, and heaven knows how we would fund it, I don't think that really gets to the problem. I think that technology is a part of the investment in the town and should be prioritized with other investments.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkerson.
Technology is different for each department as we go through town. The police department has different technologies than the fire, than the school, than the DPW, than the town hall and or the library. Those technologies are kept by themselves and they're specialized for the most part. Each department should manage its own, so no, I don't think we should set a separate budget aside for technology. It's replaced as needed with the assistance of the IT manager from the town hall, if possible, for his input, and each department has its own IT specialist, so to speak, who assists also. So I do not believe a special fund should be set up. We should let the department heads manage. If they need to go to capital planning for a bigger one, then that's a possibility they can request if a bigger need is there. But no, I would leave well enough alone.
And again to you, Mr. Wilkerson. In a once in 50 years opportunity, the MBTA and the town are working to make changes to the train station in Winchester's beautiful town center. Do you have any recommendations to improve station access or appearance, parking, or other features? Should the town provide funds to make substantial changes, even if this would involve the taking of land, as has been discussed?
That's a little bit of a blind side. I believe it's doing a conglomeration with the MBTA, and I believe the contractors are going to do what the town has come to agreed upon with the MBTA as far as a building access being, and we all know we have to have the access for the disabled for every person involved, and I do believe those meters are going to all be met. So I would not actively get involved in changing any of the components that I've seen so far. Should we buy land to add to the parking? In the area that it's located in, I'm not sure that there's much land that would be available. We could utilize the land that's there now in a fashion that might be better used, but that would take an expert to look at, and I'd have to look at the plans. So I'd say let's leave it alone for now.
Thank you. Mr. Marmon.
I don't think I have any specific recommendations. I do know that the town engineer and a committee have been studying this pretty carefully, hoping that they can, I think, put in new ramps, which is why we'd be taking the land, and perhaps putting a walkway from Laraway Road to Thompson Street. But I think as far as I know, they're doing a pretty good job. I haven't been completely up to date on that, but I think that it's being well controlled.
Thank you. Now, in that you both are, as I said, very succinct, I'm going to offer something that was not planned. We have a little bit more time, and if you both agree we will do this, would you each like to ask each other one question? I need to see nods from the both of you, or maybe no. I got one nod.
Yes,
What
yes.
do you think?
If it goes, I don't have a specific question, but I'll go along.
Well, you'd have to have one. That's the unfair part. This is like
wasn't prepared for this part.
I
so
know,
didn't.
nobody was prepared for this. I see we have one question, but if you don't have a question, then I don't want to do it, because this was unexpected, but so was having one of our candidates not show up. So if you don't have one,
I'd be willing to answer his if he would care to put it.
okay.
It's an open forum. Let's let them
It
hear
is.
what's on our minds.
As a union leader, you have fought to have your benefits maintained and your pay raised. That's fair.
Correct?
The cost of those changes has been significant and is a major driver in the override that's coming. But you're against the override. It sounds to me like you want to have your cake and eat it too. You want your benefits, but you don't want to pay for them. How can you reconcile those two positions?
I essentially pay my own raise when I pay my taxes, being a homeowner in Winchester. The unions settled for a very low amount. I believe over a 4-year contract, we looked at a 0, a 0.5. We never really reached the 1 point except for the last year of the contract, which I think is where the Finance Committee and everybody seems to have its issues. The unions accepted a 0 the first year in a way to assist the town. A lot of people are out of work, and I understand the economics of that nationwide. We see it in Wisconsin. Everybody's anti-union. The unions weren't created last night, ladies and gentlemen. They were created about 100 years ago, and in a way to assist the average worker and to get a quote-unquote fair deal. Are they being abused in some locations? Yes. Are they being abused here? No. We asked for, we accepted a fair wage. We gave the town a change in the insurance that it requested. We all had arbitration hearings scheduled for the future, which has been alluded to, which legal cost could have amounted to many dollars on both sides, which would have gained. We don't know who would have won or lost. We assume we'd have won. The town assumes it would have won. But in retrospect, no one would have won. Everybody would have been out an awful lot of money, and a lot of feelings would have been hurt. So the wages we took were small. Now I say that as a recipient of that. The payer may not look at it in the same respect. But I would ask every person out there who has a salary, when he or she goes up and asks his respective boss for a raise, he would like to get something, even if it's a small piece. And that's what we took. So yes, I can justify the unions getting a small raise. All right? And I am a member of the union. I have been for a long time. And I am the head of the union for the police patrolmen. And I have been for the last 7 years. And I have fought with these selectmen, the old town manager and the new town manager, over union contracts.
30 seconds.
And I find that what we agreed to was good for both sides.
Whoa. And you sure you don't have a question?
Well,
That's good. Well, I think that was added an interesting element to our discussion today. And we are going to move to closing statements at this point. So given that Mr. Marmon started, I would ask Mr. Wilkerson to give us your closing statement in a couple of minutes, please.
thank you everybody for being here. Again, thank the leagues on. It was an eye-opener for me. Some of the questions were very interesting, as I'm sure you all heard. I'm not up on a lot of things as my opponent is here. He has been involved in town government for a long time. He is up on some of the particulars that I am not. What I am hoping that the people of Winchester will see is I bring possibly a fresh perspective. As a union member and a union head, I can look at the issue of the insurance as one component from a different side. There are alternatives out there, the GIC only being one of them. There are other ways to control insurance. We have yet to look into those. We need to look into those. We can look into those. I'd like to be the member that helps look into those. All right, so I'm asking you to vote for me. I am against the override. I think everybody knows that. And I am the recipient, and I am going to be the recipient of possibly less pay, less police officers, less other services. I also live here, so I will be the recipient the same as you all will be. But I just think it's not in the best interest of all of us to be spending more money when there's none out there. We all need to cut back. We all need to do things in a different fashion. Good luck.
Thank you. And Mr. Marmon?
It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for attending. I wish Brian could have been here. That would have made this more useful. I think Winchester is a wonderful town. It's been good to me and my family, and it's provided me with a lot of opportunities for participation in town affairs. In addition to being in town government, I have been an officer or on the board of a number of nonprofits in town: the Historical Society with the Sanborn House, the Boat Club, the Griffin Museum, Boy Scouts, my church. All of them have a good part in town and have been good to me. I've had rewarding work in them. But there are hundreds of volunteers in dozens of organizations in town that are trying to make Winchester a better place to live. There's the League of Women Voters, for one. There's the Bright Lock Conservancy. There's Sustainable Winchester. I could go on and on. I can't possibly list them all. The selectmen have been particularly adept at reaching out to these groups and partnering with them to help solve problems in the town. In this time of tight budgets, it's one of the few ways that we can continue to move ahead. It's not easy to get everybody on the same agenda, but a successful partnership can be a real win-win for the town. And as a selectman, I would encourage this collaborative approach. I've enjoyed public service in town, and I want to continue it. I'm committed to this community. I think I have the drive and the energy to make a positive contribution to the Board of Selectmen. I ask you for your vote on March 29th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let's give both our two Dougs, Doug Marmon and Doug Wilkerson, a hand. Thank you. And if we could have our Finance Chair and our Board of Selectmen Chair come up, we'll move to the panel discussion on the override. Hi. Hi. Say your last name for me. Shines.
What you have done? I can, yeah, sure. Thanks.
Fresh water for everybody. So we have before you your Finance Committee Chair and your Board of Selectmen Chair. I think Tom Howley, your Board of Selectmen Chairman, is going to begin talking about the budget situation and why the board as a whole supports the override. And we have 8 minutes.
8 minutes?
Take as much time as you want.
Okay.
Much.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank the League of Women Voters. You know, every time we have significant decisions to make as a town, the League is there for us and provides these opportunities and others for us to just simply share information and to try and arrive at the best decisions possible. And certainly the decisions that are before us on the 29th of March are going to be very important to our town. Not only the question of who will be elected as selectmen and provide good critical thinking that we depend upon on our board, but also the question of the operating override. You already heard the candidates discuss this to some extent, but the question that will be before us truly will be one of whether we choose to maintain core municipal and educational services at the current level, or we decide, in fact, that now is the time to begin to reduce those services, both in terms of their breadth and their quality. Those are very real choices that we have to make. So on the 29th, there'll be a question on the ballot. There'll be a yes or no vote as to whether to endorse a $1,440,000 operating override that will have a $204 tax impact on the average assessed home. And the average assessed home, I believe, currently is assessed at approximately $757,000. So depending on your home, it will be more or less than that $204 amount. This is not an insignificant thing. This is not a question that our board easily came to. None of us wanted to place this question before the voters. None of us wanted to ask for additional tax revenue. But it was a decision which in the end received the unanimous endorsement of our board, of the school committee, as well as the finance committee, as you will hear. Now, does that mean that all of us enthusiastically embrace this notion? No, it does not. We all had some very significant questions. Those people who participated in this decision over a period of many months were concerned about the amount of the override, the timing. Was there a way that we could put this off? We just had the VO override question. Could we put this off until November? The decision as to the amount, some thought it should be more in order to give us a longer plan. Some thought it should be less. But in the end, we all came around the notion of we need a minimum of a 3-year plan where we do not have to come back to the voters to ask for additional money during that time period. And we need the minimum amount that is necessary in order to protect core municipal and school services. We want to ask for no more money than is necessary to do that. And the $1.4 million amount request that is going to be before the voters is that plan. Now, I'd like to just say something first about the town. We are a well-run town. Do we have opportunities for additional efficiency? Of course, every organization does. But it should be known that we are a well-run town, and what that means, good news, of course, but what it means is that the cost reductions that we will need to achieve without additional revenue will not be easy. We have a AAA bond rating, one of 15 communities in the state that have that. It's a reflection of our fiscal management. It allows us to borrow at less cost, will reduce costs for current capital programs. The VO school will cost us approximately $350,000 less to build. If the high school goes forward, it could be as much as $1 million. The AAA bond rating is something that we're proud of, we want to hang on to. We were recently rated #1 in educational productivity. And that means that in terms of the outcome, the product that we get out of our schools in terms of quality education for the amount spent, we do extremely well. #1 in the state. We spend $4,500 per pupil less than is spent in Lexington, and I could name a number of other communities as well. Our housing values in Winchester, they have held up better than 95% of the other cities and towns in the state. We've captured health insurance efficiencies. You've heard that in the previous discussion. While other towns have been hamstrung by discussions with their unions, Winchester went ahead, did responsible plan redesign. We have avoided over $2 million in insurance costs. We've had 25 energy-saving projects that have been implemented over the last 5 years. We have actually reduced our energy consumption by 28%. DPW, we have reduced the size of DPW by 44% over the last 10 years. In terms of state recognition of the way in which we manage our projects, we have been granted a waiver to have an in-house project manager for the VO school and eventually the high school if that goes forward. It's very unusual. Communities do not get that. It will save us over $700,000. And contrary to some of the comments on the wage increases, I believe they were responsible. They were 0.3%, then 0.5% in 2010, 1.4%, 1.9% going forward another 2 years. For that, we settled all of our insurance costs, captured the $2 million in insurance protection, and we got our unions to be contributing 25%. In Wisconsin, I think they were fighting over 8% contribution. We are now at 25%. So we have a number of things I think we should be proud of. But the fact remains that to provide this level of service, we, in fact, do not have sufficient revenues to do it. In spite of those efficiencies, we do not have the sufficient revenues to continue the quality of education and municipal services. When you have enrollment that grows by 25% over the last 10 years, when we're going to be projecting another 100-some kids next year, when special education costs are going up by 25%. Those are costs that we need to respond to. When insurance, in spite of our efforts, climbs by over 10% a year and is over 10% of our budget, those are costs that we need to respond to. And when 67% of our revenue is capped at 2.5%, it frankly is just simply not sufficient to maintain the quality of services that a town like Winchester has traditionally expected. So what will the result be if the override does not pass? It will be significant. We should not fool ourselves that this is like other years, whatever you might think of previous years. There'll be a relatively small budget gap in 12, $728,000, but it will climb to $1.5 million the next year in 13, and there'll be another $1 million worth of cuts that will have to be made the year after that. And the reductions will come in the form of services and personnel. We are a service industry. That's all we have. So there will be reductions in police patrol coverage. The library will lose its certification. We will not be able to maintain minimum funding. There will be no book borrowing for that. We will have to reduce the traffic guard program for schools. The funding for the Winchester Substance Abuse Coalition will go away. We will have to eliminate the school resource officer. We won't meet minimum recommended coverage levels for fire. The advanced life support system will have to be taken out of service at various shifts. So will the fire engine at the West Side Fire Station. It goes on. But we have a plan. And the plan is something that has key components to it, of which one is the additional revenue. It depends on continued strategic expense reductions, things like consolidation of our MIS department, cross-training clerical people. We are going to continue to capture efficiencies and reduce costs. That's going to be essential to the plan. We're also going to be careful about our use of operating reserves. We have a recommended level of operating reserves that for the 3-year period of the plan will keep our reserves in place to protect our AAA bond rating. We will not go below that. And so the reductions that will have to be made if, in fact, the override does not pass will come out of services. But we have a plan to protect those operating reserves. And we will need additional revenue in the form of the $1.4 million override. That will allow us to protect core services during this 3-year period. So I don't know where I came in on time, but I wanted to give you some context for this decision that everybody will need to make.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing overview. And now we will hear from the Finance Committee Chair, Peter Scheimitz.
I answered almost anything. With a name like that.
Is there anything left to tell us? You have just as much time.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum. I'd also like to thank the Finance Committee we're in the midst of what we're calling budget season. We're kind of working very hard on this issue in real time. We at the Finance Committee, we have a lot of new people, and I found myself yesterday discussing with them the process of going through and looking at the budget. And I had forgotten how frustrating it was the first few years to do that, because you come in with this view that municipal government, town government, state government is bloated and there must be something to cut, and you're looking at all these budgets, and the department chairs are coming in and telling you that their situation is dire and you're not finding anything to cut. And after about 6 years at this, I'm beginning I'm losing that sense, and I'm beginning to understand just how raw and at the edge the town really operates from day to day. Winchester is, as Tom said, very, very lucky. Over the last 6 years, we have made a number of moves that have taken us from having almost no reserves whatsoever. And the discussions that we were having around the FinCom table 6 years ago were very different than now, where we were talking emergency measures and breaking the capital stabilization lockbox in case we ran into any problems. And now we're talking about protecting a 10% reserve. Now that's important, but that is the result of some very serious and strategic cutting. Tom has laid them out, but I think they need repeating. There were two very, very significant measures that were taken by the Board of Selectmen on health care, and that represents almost $2 million of money in the bank. There were the initiatives that were taken on energy that represents almost another $1 million that's in the bank, and then there was a previous override. we are in a far better position financially than we were the last time we were talking about an override. And that is because we have found some very significant means to rein in the costs of the town's budget. Now, what that leaves us with is very little place to cut. We have had instances in the past in which all of the police cars have been deployed to incidences, and there have been other crimes that the police could not go to. The coverage according to the chief of the fire coverage at this point is now slightly more than half of what is recommended to respond to a single room fire. So as far as your deployed personnel in the fire department and in the police department, you really do no longer have a place to cut if you actually want to have the coverage that you believe you should have in a town like this. The draw to the town, the reason that people want to be here is both the town center, but it's also the schools. And the schools are growing very quickly. In fact, in an area in which the school population is dropping very quickly, Winchester's is going up, almost as if defying gravity. In fact, we had consultants in who come in and say things like, well, you know, it's going to level off and soon it'll drop. And we keep saying, no, we're different. And expert after expert leaves just shrugging their shoulders saying, yep, Winchester's different. And that difference is why your home prices have remained the same and not dropped like the rest of the country. And there's very little, and we have to be very careful how we proceed with our budgeting unless we want to join the rest of the country. We want to have those people decide that this is not the place to live and our housing prices will drop. So on the one hand, we've done very well. We've got the reserves in place. On the other hand, we have drawn the budgeting right down to the bare bones. Now, previous to this, there was the discussion that the selectmen's candidates were having, and Doug Marmon discussed a process in which we started doing three-year plans. Now that process took place just before I came on the board, but when I was there, we were adding a complexity to that, which was controlled growth. The fact of the matter is that there is inflation, and therefore your budget must grow in order to keep up with that inflation. So there's a peculiar logic to your three-year plans, which result in my adage that all three-year plans include an override. That's just because your costs grow faster than the 2.5% that you're allowed to grow, or actually it comes to be about 2.75 when you throw in new growth, because we like to put additions and swimming pools in. Given that, any three-year plan will have this override. Now, the growth of costs has, one would believe, slowed down. But I think that within the mental mind space of the people who both work for the town and who run the town, we haven't caught up with that. And therefore, and this would be the only place that the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen would part ways, we would have liked to have held out another year before we had the contracts. Be that as it may, that's in the past. It was a very, very modest contract. And the benefits that we received from those contracts were large. We nailed down all of the issues related to the health care costs, and we have essentially a period of relative calm of at least 3 years in which we don't have to worry about these issues. And at a time when we are having a little bit of trouble bringing in a new town manager, it's nice to at least have something off the table. But one thing we did do, when we took the three-year plan and we didn't take into account controlled growth. Then we did the three-year plan and we did take into account controlled growth. And then finally, and with the controlled growth, we then began to understand that in the grand picture of things, you have an override coming every 3 to 5 years. It's an inescapable process. We can describe it as being something that's happening this year and something unusual about this year. Yes, we are in a very bad economic position. It is something that we are going to have every 3 to 5 years. It is inescapable. It is part of the numeric logic of the proposition 2.5. But we then took this process a step further and we added randomness to the process. What does it look like when you add the fact that we can't predict what things are going to cost. We can't predict our revenues. And what you discover is not so much that you may or may not have an override. You will still have an override every 3 to 5 years, but you very much need your reserve funds. And the size of the randomness that you face as a town, though small on a percentage basis, is very large on a numeric basis. So even if you have a random process that produces even 0.5 or 0.6% of your budget as being up in the air, subject to that randomness, that's coming close to half of your, if that takes place over a couple of year period, that's coming close to half of your reserve funds. So on the one hand, we can expect an override, we are at that time, and on the other hand, we need to reserve the money to keep the town government going the way we'd like it to go.
Thank you. And is either of you planning on using a computer to?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. All right. So we're going to move on to questions that Winchester residents have emailed in. And can I call you Peter and Tom?
That would be great.
That would be lovely by me. I won't mess up the last names. And you can have up to a couple minutes. Some of them will, we'll be flexible on time. The new financial reality facing all of us, both homeowners and town government, demands that we do things differently to stay within our budgets. Old thinking consisted of cutting services and/or raising taxes. New thinking will prompt us to change old assumptions and invent new ways to maintain a high quality of life within limited resources. In that light, has the town of Winchester considered making other cost-saving measures? And I'm going to give two unrelated questions, so we'll take them separately. Why is Town Hall open every day? Do different operating hours make sense when many transactions are now done online? Peter, you want to start on that?
Oh, okay, so we'll do the first one? I'm sorry.
Why is Town Hall open every day?
Okay. First of all, in the summer, it's not. So, so they took the steps of closing Town Hall on Fridays during the summers. And then closing Town Hall, say, every other day, doesn't necessarily save you money unless you actually take your entire staff and put them on half-time. But in the overall size of budget issues, that even that's not very large. I mean, if we just said we don't need general government, we're only saving $3 million on an $85 million budget. So yes, there's savings that can be made. You can forestall an override for a year or two if we even just got rid of it completely, decided we didn't need town manager, assessor's office, the clerk, and the engineering department, and all those people who actually run the town. You're not saving that much money.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I think that's true. We are at a point, and I think Peter was very eloquent about it, where in order to achieve the savings that we would need to achieve without additional revenue from the override, we will need to go to the major departments. It will be public safety and it will be the schools. I mean, that's really where most of the savings will come from, as well as the DPW. There's simply really no other place to get meaningful savings. But having said that, I think that we have been good about trying to go after those things that really drive the budget. We've talked about energy, what we've accomplished. I think we should be very proud of that. And we've already done 25 projects. There'll be 7 more this year. And only one of those projects, the energy reduction projects, will be funded out of town money. We have qualified for other grants in order to do that. It's a very good thing. We're going to be looking hard at MIS consolidation to see if there's a more effective way for us to provide.
Can I just ask the question before you answer?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the next question.
Oh.
So as you segue into it, can we share services and/or personnel with other communities? For example, the Board of Health. And
yeah, they're all sort of related in terms of innovation. MIS consolidation, there may be some opportunities there. We have saved about $45,000 this current year by reducing a position and kind of reorganizing department. I think there's probably more that we can do. Could we engage in some form of regionalization for some of our services? I think if we can do that, I think we should. For example, some of the things that I think other communities have done that we should consider are health services. Could we share those services, provide them with other communities? In terms of certainly a minor matter, but our dog pound, that's something that we could regionalize. Could we regionalize, I say that for my fellow selectman, Mr. Berman, it's one of his key causes. Could we in fact consolidate dispatching of our public safety personnel? There are communities that do that. So we need to look wherever we can to wring efficiency out of our government. There's absolutely no question. Even with, as we say, the periodic overrides, it will not be enough. And in fact, people should not give us the money if in fact we are not going after every opportunity for innovation. I believe we're doing that, and we're going to have to do more. Insurance plan redesign will be on the table. The value that I feel for the 3-year contracts that we have is that we will be able to use that time period to engage in very clear, respectful negotiations regarding further plan design changes for insurance. I also happen to feel, while I am not someone who subscribes to removing people's collective bargaining rights, I do believe that we need to negotiate further changes in terms of work accountability and administration. I do object to the idea that if you were the last person hired, you are automatically the first person fired. That is no way to run an organization. And so those are very difficult issues. If Mr. Wilkinson were here, he would tell us that in no uncertain terms. But I believe in order to gain efficiency, protect jobs, and protect the services, that it's those difficult changes that we need to make. And I would hope the Board of Selectmen will be doing that aggressively over the next 3 years.
Peter, can you also talk to that question?
So, yeah, the question is regionalization?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably the first question we always ask when the fire department chief and the police chief come in to talk with us, and we ask them if we can regionalize their services, and obviously they're not necessarily in favor of it, but their logic is fairly clear. The thing that you want out of your police department and the thing that you want out of your fire department is the response time to be very low. You want them to be at your house before they're there to sell tickets, and you want them to be at the crime scene before while it still makes sense to have them there. And so the geographic distribution of firefighters where they stay, firehouses, and the distribution of police cars is going to remain the same whether you change, make them a regional police force or regional fire force, or keep it at the town level. And right now, within the town of Winchester, we're kind of at the limits of response for both cases. So the places that you're actually going to save money if you regionalize is in the management structure, which means that essentially you can save money by losing control. And so that's a question. I mean, that's the question you're at right now in those particular areas. Is the money savings worth the loss of control of your police department and your fire department? I don't particularly know. Now, when you get to the school department, I think it's very, very clear. We control our school systems, and therefore we control the type of community that we are. That's a decision that we all made by moving here, and it's a decision that I've had, it's a conversation I've had with many, many people who did the very same thing. They had their children in Cambridge, or they had their children in Alston, or they had their children in Boston, and they all made the same decision when those children were 4. They came to Winchester, and they came to Winchester for one very, very real reason. The school systems here appear to do a wonderful job, and that's why they come. I don't think that and it's the same is true with the school system. If we want to save money in the school system, we are looking at giving up control, and I don't think we're ready for that. So that's really the change we're making here. It's not a matter of efficiency, it's a matter of control, and that's what the money is buying.
Just very, very quickly, this particular voter was curious about the Board of Health. Are you looking at that as for regionalizing?
I think that what we're going to need to do is that has come up on our radar screen at the Board of Selectmen's table. We have mentioned it to senior management. I think what we need to do is actually collect all the various ideas of best practices that we can find anywhere in the state or the country, and then focus on a few. These would be matters of innovation that, as Peter said, will be a bit of a stretch for us, but nonetheless, I think we should pursue. And I think that health services is undoubtedly going to be on that list. I think it is a very likely kind of service that we may gain some efficiency without a significant erosion in terms of service quality by combining our effort with that of neighboring communities.
Thank you.
But one thing we shouldn't forget about the health services is they do earn a lot of the money that they cost us.
Yep.
They are a money-making operation.
Well, okay. Moving on, and if we can start with Tom on this one. The proposed school budget, do you think it's justified given the town's financial position?
Well, again, I think it's a question of choice, which is what March 29th will be about. We've talked a little bit about the enrollment increases that have been taking place. 25% over the last 10 years, over 900 children have been added to our system. That is a very large increase for us. That's a couple elementary schools. And of course, we haven't added a couple elementary schools. We have, in fact, tried to invest in the ones we have. But with that rate of increase, over 100 kids for this coming year, I believe is the projection. I think 114 kids. With that kind of increase, if you project that out over a series of years, I think that the request that the school committee has made is, in fact, very responsible. I don't find it to be excessive in any way. In fact, what it does is, I believe the only increase in personnel, and Peter can correct me, I believe there's perhaps 3 or 4 full-time positions that have been added at McCall, which is really where they're feeling the greatest pressure right now. And other than that, it's essentially level services. There's some initiatives around technology and a few things, but for the most part, it's just simply trying to hang on to what is currently being provided and to hang on to class size. So I think that if, in fact, we were to cut further back than that, and indeed that's what would happen with the failure of the override, over a period of 3 years, there would be a reduction of approximately 40 full-time positions within the school system. At the same time that enrollment continues to grow, that will be a rather dramatic decrease in school educational quality for our community.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 increases, right? I think that it's 24 over the life of the cuts rather than the.
Oh, originally I saw 40 from the
superintendent. Right, they did the third year wrong.
Okay.
I'm not sure we can all.
Okay, sorry. So just to get numbers right, the growth in the schools in the middle school is about 2, 3, or 4, but in the case of a non-override, we think, on the FinCom at least, that the school committee did the addition wrong for the third year. So by the third year, it'll be 24 layoffs rather than 34 layoffs, which is the way that they cut it in, because they did the they added it wrong, because you lose 14 or 15 the first year and 10 the second year, but they added those two together and put them in the third year and then added that together again. And so they did the compounding incorrectly. But the answer is that it's still devastating. I think as far as the schools are concerned, you have to remember something. You can't look at this in isolation. You can't say that we got here and we can forget our past. Our past was a steady erosion of services within the school. I mean, kids who live outside a couple of miles, kids who live inside a couple of miles and want to take the bus now have to pay for the bus. They didn't have to do that a few years ago. Athletics are now paid for out of the pockets of the kids whose parents have the kids in athletics. There's been a steady erosion. At one point, we reached a point where we had no librarians in the elementary school. Now, some point about 2 years ago, we got a grip on it. We had a couple of pretty good years as far as finances were concerned, and the school system was allowed to actually bottom out on its services and begin to restore services. So it isn't that we're sitting here, and everybody likes to compare ourselves to Western with their $8,000 per student higher cost, but the fact is that we aren't giving it away here. And I mean, if you all look at the chairs you're sitting in, and from my point of view, the chairs they're sitting in, we're not in a beautifully appointed school, and we are in the newest room in the school. we're not throwing the money away, and yet we have one of the highest rated educational systems in the state, and that's because we do spend the money that we need to spend. But I don't see what will happen to this if we take that money away. If you make the cuts that we're talking about in the non-override budget, you don't have the Winchester school system anymore. It's just not going to be the same place.
All right, Peter, I want you to stick with leading us on this next one.
Okay.
Would you dip into town reserves if forced to, or would you really make the cuts proposed?
You know, that's a strategic negotiating decision that you're making with the voting public. And at this point, the only answer is you make the cuts. Now, what happens April 1st? That's a different story. But I know for a fact that most of the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and right now in March, the School Committee, all believe you make the cuts. I don't know any other way to go. If we don't pass the override, as tragic as I think it would be, we have to make those cuts.
My answer is the same. You know, this is not, again, something that we came to lightly. There's been a lot of thought put into how can we make the sizable reductions in services and personnel that would have to be made without the override, but how would we do that in the most thoughtful way possible, in the way that would have the least impact? And that is what the plan is that's being presented. So I think while the Finance Committee may come up with some different ideas for us as the budget process unfolds, and we're going to be engaged with them in that discussion. If we can find better ways to do that, we will. But otherwise, the other piece that we've been speaking about is to preserve our operating reserves. So I don't think the answer for us is going to be to forestall the reductions in services that we've described, because very quickly we will find that we have worked our way through our operating reserves to a point where we'll have no capacity to respond to surprises. And in fact, we very well then may be putting ourselves in danger in terms of the next time we have a bond rating review. So I don't think that is going to be an option for us. I do think that we are going to have to make the kinds of reductions that we've been describing.
Well, once again, Tom, you've jumped ahead and started answering the next question
Can't help
before
myself.
I've asked it.
I'm so excited about the next question.
So voters really were wondering, you know, what would be the consequences? Why not use some more of these town reserves? And what would happen? Could you elaborate a little bit more on the consequences of using the town reserves? And I know you just started.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there anything you
Peter
wanna
can
expand
help
on?
me out on this, of course. The plan that we have put forward actually proposes to use the same amount of operating reserves whether the override passes or fails. We should know that. We have picked a number that we believe is an appropriate number that allows us to stay within, during the 3-year plan, stay within the parameters that we have established through a policy that the Board of Selectmen has passed during the last 6-7 months. And that is that we are targeting a 10% operating reserve, but we want to go no less than 6%. As Peter said, we were lower than that a few years ago. We've sort of built ourselves back up. We want to stay within that 6 to 10% zone. So if we were to start spending at a higher rate, we would find in year 1 or 2 from now that in fact we would drop below 6%. And it would happen fairly quickly. So we think it would not be prudent to do that. If something comes along that we need to respond to and we need those operating reserves, we want them to be available. We also don't want to be going into the Vincent Owen project and have our